hello, hello, as Walter Lewin would say. So, we're going to be talking about negation today. Negation is from the property of integers. So remember, we have our integers, which are equal to negative infinity to, so it's negative infinity, positive infinity, right? We have negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, dot, dot, dot. So this is our set of integers. And what we have here, right in this section, are positive numbers. All of these, all the way to infinity, are positive numbers, hence our positive infinity. And all of these numbers here are negative numbers. And they go on for negative infinity, hence this little negative right here. So, we're going to talk about the properties of these negative numbers and what they do to other numbers. So the negative number looks like a minus sign. You've definitely gone over minus before and how minusing works. Well, minusing doesn't really exist in that sort of sense, because what we actually have is, let's say we have 3 minus 2. What we actually have here is we can factor, remember we talked about factor, we can factor out this negative and we can get 3 plus, or we can go ahead and factor out the negative and say 3 plus negative 2. Or not factor out the negative, we can remove the negative, because what we really have here is 3 plus negative 2, right? And so we can go ahead and do that, and we know that the minuses are all just going to be negative forms of positive numbers. So that comes with some interesting notations or notions, especially when concerning things like multiplication. So if we take any two numbers, let's say A times B, but A is negative, we're always going to result in a negative number. So A times B is going to be, negative A times B is going to be equal to negative C. When we did A times B, we always got a positive C. So that's going to be a positive C. Well, what's interesting is when we do negative A times negative B, what we get is not negative C, but what we instead get is positive C. And we'll see that with some actual problems here. Now let's go ahead and do negative 7 times 4. And we can also do 7 times 4. And we can do negative 7 times negative 4. And we can see what all of these are equal to. So we know that 7 times 4 is 28. So that means that since we have a negative here, it is repeating a negative amount of times, and so instead of going to the right on our number line, so hopping 7 places 4 times, or 4 places 7 times, we're hopping to the left in the integers, 7 places 4 times, or 4 places 7 times, which gets us negative 28. Well, this is the exact opposite in a sense, because when we're hopping this way, we get 28. But if we start there as well and we have a negative of a negative, this is going to cancel out. So a negative of a negative is going to be equal to a positive, right? So what we get here is we simply get 28. And it's very nice and very easy to look at. So let's actually look at an interesting property. So let's go ahead and say we have some number x, and we have negative x here, right? And we can go ahead and say negative x times y. So explain to me why negative x times y is the same thing as factoring out the negative and doing x times y. Right? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at this. If we know that negative, we're going to be having some negative right here, and we remember that all numbers times 1 are going to be equal to that number, so 1x is actually equal to x. I'm going to draw the curvy x so that you don't get confused with the multiplication symbol. So we know that 1x is equal to x. What we can actually change this into is we can say negative 1 times x times y. And that is the same thing as bringing our negative 1 on the outside of xy, right? And so instead of having negative 1 here, now we can just have our negative. And so this is a factor, this is an interesting property of negation and negatives that you'll use a lot later on, so this is why I'm introducing it here. So negative numbers are fascinating just by the property that they're the exact opposite of our positive numbers. And if you take all the positive numbers and you take all the negative numbers and add them together, what are you going to? You combine them, you mishmash them, you're just going to get 0. So that's a lovely note. Everything is just complex nothingness if you add everything together. So thank you. That was negation. Have a great day.